Hey guys, welcome back to Spectra Creative. I'm your host, Scott Toy Guru Nightlick, and a little bit of a different format this time, although I've been getting more and more about doing videos with actually me in them and not just my voiceover. This one's a bit of, I guess, a unplugged. I don't have I have a specific topic I want to talk about, which is all of the toys that were just revealed at New York Comic Con and some of the larger issues they have with the toy industry, how manufacturing works, how pre-sales work, how fan reactions work, and I'm including myself in the fan reaction because I have some very, very mixed reaction. All right, let's talk about the two big ones, the HasLab reveals, or the ones going on right now, which is the Sentinel from X-Men 97 and the Ecto 1. All right, well, I guess let's come to the Ecto 1 first. More direct. I'm just so glad this toy is being made and is being funded. When I was at Mattel, when we worked on the line, we tried. All we had was a cardboard model to show off. I think if we'd actually had a prototype, the way Hasbro does, but those were the early days of, if you will, crowd-funded corporate items like Castle Grayskull, and we tried with the Ecto one. So I'm delighted they're making one. I'll have to see how the how the end of the year goes if I purchase one. I'd like to. If I have extra funds, I may. It's not a priority the way, like, saying getting a Cantina was, or getting a HasLab Sentinel, which I'm going to come back to in a moment. See how I did that? So, and I love also that they're doing the tiers, where you could buy the basic vehicle or more vehicle with more figures. Although I'm shocked the more isn't even a higher price. You get like 4 figures. It's not like another $100 worth of product. But I'll let Hasbro deal with their margins. Either way, it's a good deal. It's about the same price that Mattel would have been charging for their crowdfunded Ecto one. That was 10 years ago. I think we were charging like $350, something like that. But again, all we had was a cardboard model. We didn't have the resources that today's crowdfunding, which are priorities for companies. Back then, it was sort of like a side project kicking over the can to see if it worked. But that's what you do when you try things out. All right. On that note, and before we get to the Sentinel, talking about crowdfunding corporate items in particular, because there's obviously a lot of pushback and talk about this online right now in line with both Ecto 1, the Sentinel, and the fact that the Sentinel and a previous Hasbro Pulse larger Dragon Man figure from about a month ago are just pre-orders versus something like Ecto 1 and Giant Man, who was only 2 inches bigger than the current Sentinel, was a pre-order or a funding. So there's a big difference, and there's a reason. I mean, one, it is great that Hasbro is experimenting and trying more with just putting out product for people to pre-buy, not actually pre-fund. And as a recap from one of my earlier videos about this subject, the reason that companies, even large companies, giant Fortune 500 companies, require someone to pre-fund an object is because it's the same position within the toy making cycle that a retailer would be in. A retailer would pre-order product. They basically secure the funds and the demand for a new item. And if there's no retailer involved, the same system just uses the fans, the customers, as this slot within the existing toy making process. So the pre-sale, the crowdfunding item like the Sentinel and Galactus and Ecto 1 and Castle Grayskull and Eternia, all of these things are there because it's a company is not going to just dish out hundreds and thousands of dollars in tooling without a guaranteed customer, whether that customer is Walmart or a customer is you and me times 10,000. All right, so with that in mind, and there's a lot of pushback saying, oh, yes, large companies shouldn't be doing, they should just put this stuff out there. And obviously they're doing more of this. The reason, there's a big difference between Giant Man and the Sentinel. So even though it's way more than 2 inches. The Sentinel that's being put out now from X-Men 97, which is about 4 inches smaller, but a lot not as wide, no lights and sounds, not as much piece count as the previous one, less than half the cost of the previous one. Now, first of all, why can Hasbro afford to bet on this figure? Well, simple. Content is king. It's tied directly to current content, meaning X-Men 97, heavily featured. The Sentinels, they're back in pop culture, much bigger than people just rewatching the old show. So, having new content out there is everything. While Giant Man did have movies in the sense of Quantumania and Giant Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, that was movie Giant Man. The figure that we all got was comic book Giant Man, which does not have, there's no animated series, if you will, for Giant Man right now. He did appear on Earth's Mightiest Heroes, but that's an entirely different YouTube channel video. All right, so that's a big reason why Hasbro is able to do a direct sale, pre-sale, not crowdfunded Sentinels, because it's in current content. It is much smaller. It's got almost no deco on it. It's probably a very inexpensive figure to make. And part of that is, so that's my other, call it rant on this subject, is, I dished out $400 or whatever it was for the HasLab Sentinel, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Seeing this one, like, would that have filled my Sentinel need, if you will, in my collection? Part of me feels like, yeah, I really would have, because I did love X-Men 97, and if this one had come out first, I would have likely bought this one and then not bought the giant HasLab one. But because the giant one came out first and didn't think I was going to get a slightly smaller but more animated, accurate version a few years later for half the price. So, should a company, when they've done a HasLab item like Galactus, like the sail barge, be forbidden from ever putting out a smaller version of that at retail? If we got a sail barge that was, say, half the barge, maybe just the front half, or maybe just the port side or the starboard side, if you will, how would fans feel about that? And I'm definitely going through some of that with the Sentinel, because I really love my HasLab Sentinel, but I look at this new animated one, and while I don't collect animated X-Men figures, this one I feel like would have gotten the deal done for my need for a larger Sentinel, and it's a lot less expensive. But Sentinels are evergreen army builder characters, and you can't fault a company for constantly putting these out, especially when they're in new content. So I get why Hasbro is putting it out, and any grief they're going to get from people like me that are like, oh, I spent twice as much on a bigger one. Well, I've also had that for 2 years, and I've gotten to enjoy that. My bigger one comes with way more accessories. I love using the tentacle as part of my display. And again, I don't collect animated, so I collect comic-based, so this is the comic-based Sentinel for me. So despite that, it makes sense why the Sentinel would be out again. It's in content. It's an army builder. It's an A-list X-Men villain again because of the content and the recognition. So that's why Hasbro can afford to take more of a bet. They know there's an audience for that. If they put out a comic book based Giant Man with no required fan funding, that's a much bigger risk. Giant Man is not as popular a character as Sentinels. Or Galactus, way less popular, especially in comic book version, not the current MCU version. All right, so that's kind of my my New York Comic Con Hasbro stuff. People have wanted me to talk about Mondo and Masters, and I don't have much to talk about with that. It's just another Masters line, which is great, but I kind of can't think of what the angle is, other than saying, yeah, it's another Masters line. It's another share of dollar. For if you have $20 to spend on, or $100 to spend on He-Man product, you spend it on Mattel product or Mondo product or Super 7 product when they had the license. To me, that's kind of the only angle I see, is that it's just more product out there, and it's great for people who want that scale and that style. Awesome. I think the figures are beautiful. I don't have room in my collection for another full Masters of the Universe line, which is why I was very picky with Origins. Not because I didn't like it, but just because I already have a full Motu line with classics. So that's the same thing with Mondo. If there's a figure that comes out that I'm like, oh my god, I gotta have this, maybe. Either way, for fans who want that scale, want that style, and the fact that they're doing 2000X, awesome. It's just a share a wallet issue, which is definitely an issue. All right, I've ranted too much. Let me get this posted, and I hope you guys enjoyed this format. Let me know in the comments. I can do more of these kind of just unscripted, unmiked. Well, I do have a mic, but you know what I mean. Thanks for sharing. It's the best way to support the channel. I really do appreciate that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.